Vietnam is currently establishing a new international financial center in Da Nang, known as VIFC-DN. The goal is creating a secure conduit for global capital. This new center cannot rely on standard retail trading volume for its survival. Retail liquidity is often too fragmented and volatile to sustain a new financial jurisdiction. To achieve long-term stability, VIFC-DN must specifically target specialized global institutional capital, large-scale funds that operate with multi-decade horizons. This capital is intended to fund regional green infrastructure and large-scale technology projects across central Vietnam. However, a core conflict exists. Institutional capital requires mathematically provable risk mitigation, yet frontier green assets carry significant inherent uncertainties in valuation and execution. To successfully attract this capital, the VIFC-DN must go beyond offering investment opportunities. It must engineer a completely rigid, risk-proof operational sandbox. The MDVC Fund Management Company framework acts as the engineered solution to this institutional risk problem. This framework operates within non-negotiable boundaries. It is limited to $250 million in assets, a 5-year testing horizon, and a strict requirement for 100% institutional participation. At MDVC, the strategic mandate for absolute safety dictates the actual operational plumbing of the fund. They apply a zero-trust operational model to every aspect of financial management. In this framework, no single individual or department is assumed to be acting correctly by default. Trust is physically and legally enforced by the architecture of the system itself, rather than by reputation or brand. The first pillar of integration protects the underlying assets through extreme structural separation. Power is fractured away from the central fund manager. MDVC is surrounded by independent nodes, the custodian bank, securities commission, and auditors. This rule prevents any single entity from holding simultaneous control over assets, cash flow, or data. They form a closed loop of supervision. This separation of powers applies directly to how institutional money moves through the system. The MDVC structure utilizes a critical rule. The fund manager never touches the investor's money. Capital flow explicitly bypasses the MDVC balance sheet, moving directly from the investor to an independent, segregated custody account. This bypass mechanism eliminates the traditional counterparty risk associated with fund manager insolvency. If MDVC as an entity were to fail, the institutional assets remain completely unaffected in independent custody. Structural disintermediation acts as the essential prerequisite for institutional participation in a developing market. The second pillar is the real-world asset, or RWA, module. It creates conditional liquidity for traditionally illiquid infrastructure projects. Institutions are often skeptical of digital tokens that operate in regulatory gray areas without legal anchoring. MDVC relies on the fact that digital ledgers require analog legal frameworks. Ownership is legally anchored in an insolvency-segregated special-purpose vehicle in the physical world. An oracle and independent audit padlock act as the bridge to the digital ledger. The digital token functions strictly as a digital representation of these underlying analog rights. A strict valuation rule ensures the digital value can never legally or technically exceed the risk-adjusted value of the real asset. In this framework, RWA tokenization serves purely as a transparency and tracking upgrade. The third pillar maintains absolute systemic safety inside the pilot sandbox through technology. A 7-layer technology architecture runs the sandbox, ranging from core cloud security to the user interface. Regulatory compliance is hard-coded directly into the middle layers of the stack, specifically the transaction and ledger layers. Anti-money laundering and know-your-transaction protocols operate in real time. This automation removes human bias and manual processing delays from the compliance checks. The system also includes emergency protocols for cases where the automation detects a severe anomaly or market manipulation. Multi-source pricing validation prevents oracle manipulation by reconciling market data, cash flows, and internal data into a verified price. Secure custody uses a 3 of 5 multi-party computation wallet, ensuring no single entity can authorize a transfer. But if these defensive layers are somehow compromised, the system's ultimate operational failsafe immediately triggers, an uncompromising, automated circuit breaker. Abnormal volatility triggers a hard-coded 72-hour freeze protocol, instantly locking the system for investigation. High-tech automation within the VIFC-DN framework prioritizes defense over speed, functioning exclusively as an uncompromising split-second protection layer. Beyond the technology, we must consider the human element that manages this environment. Extreme automation allows for a highly lean organizational structure. Just 24 to 30 people manage the entire system across 4 specialized teams. The organization adheres to a supreme rule regarding oversight. Risk management, AML, and internal audit personnel must remain absolutely independent. These oversight roles bypass the standard executive hierarchy and report directly to the board of directors. This reporting structure is designed to eliminate internal conflicts of interest. Rigid metrics define success for the zero trust model. The acceptable deviation for net asset value calculations is exactly 0, as is the limit for audit exceptions. For a large-scale institutional investor, these specific and rigid operational KPIs serve as the absolute ultimate proof of systemic safety. This operational architecture supports the broader macro goal of establishing the Danong IFC. By enforcing operations that define the limits of the fund's strategy, MDVC has transformed this zero-trust architecture into the actual institutional product.